think what's going to happen here, you're also going to see the pro-life movement look at this. You know, it's going to have something to say there. If you'll remember, Ruby Ridge, Waco, these are cases where the ATF and the FBI came within a state for something that was not going outside that state. And they went on a killing spree.
Right. Well, and what is beautiful about what Hardin has done here is he has taken this and we get this done at the state level. We don't have to go to the county militias and get the counties all involved. Although we should be getting our sheriffs involved and getting our sheriffs behind these kinds of movements, because our sheriffs already should be protecting us from the killer, the FBI killers, the ATF killers, the federal killers that are out there who can be stopped by the locals, and it's generally the sheriff that'll be stopping them. And unfortunately, I've had this conversation with our sheriff, and with sheriffs across the state, and they do not get this. The whole constitutional sheriff concept is not yet accepted widely within Oklahoma. And we need to make it happen.
I give them a break on this. I know Oldham doesn't. He's less forgiving than I am, but I do understand that law enforcement are not constitutional law scholars. And
neither am I.
To those
but they're in the law enforcement.
They're just about a whole other law.
Trust me. Trust me. I wish that they were.
Yeah.
I wish that they were. But there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of differing interpretations, right or wrong or indifferent, of the Constitution by law departments in dozens of states and thousands of universities.
I want to just spring off of that, because in the state question 807, this medical marijuana thing, one of the corrections they made in there actually was something I gave them. I'm like, I'm telling Ryan Kiesel, ACLU, because one of the things they said about that, the plants that somebody grows can't be seen from the street. And I said, you know what you mean, but I said, you're not saying what you mean. And he said, well, in someplace else. I said, no. You got to write this, not so some judge or lawyer knows it. You've got to write this plain enough that the cop working the night shift understands it. And I think that's your point there, is when we make things so construed in the statutory code, we make it really hard for the people who are, where the rubber meets the road.
Except this is really simple, and they don't have an excuse.
No, I get that. I'm getting that. But what I'm saying is, D'Ambrosa's got a point here in that the U.S. Constitution is simply written on just a few pieces of paper here.
But the spirit behind it is what a cop should be upholding.
Oh, absolutely.
And a law that violates the spirit of the law, if the cop doesn't understand the spirit of the law, he should not be a cop.
I agree with you.
Period.
And a cop that has a philosophical bent of his own...
Then he shouldn't be a cop.
Right.
Should not.
I agree with that. But you've got to make it so plain. And this is what I like about what Hardin said. I say this is why it reads like a revival meeting here. He makes this very clear, where there is no wiggle room for a cop who's for gun control. He leaves no wiggle room.
Right.
And we have to be careful on these things. It's just like I told Chip Paul. You understood what you meant when you said a 7% tax on marijuana sales. But you didn't say sales tax, so the idiots down there at the tax commission says, we're going to call that an excise tax, and now it's going to be 16% instead of 7%. So that's my point here, is when you're writing good law, you've got a standard, and you've got to make it understandable also to the citizen who has to live under it.
Well, there's that, but the thing is that good law never violates a right. Not any single person's rights. This is the problem with the pro-life or the abolition movement, is they don't get that their law could violate somebody's rights.
It's true.
And so therefore, and they're they had been unwilling to hear it.
Explain.
So the problem is that you deal with the murder, you don't say you can't have an abortion, because that would outlaw basically a DNC for something.
A miscarriage has
a
already
miscarriage.
happened. Yeah.
And you could end up being declared a murderer and suffer for it just because of the way the law is written.
I agree.
And so
they need to write their proposed legislation more precisely.
well, and we need to take it. We need to take it and attack these issues to the problem at hand,
Yeah.
not do what they accuse the pro-life movement of doing, is taking it around the bend, and by so doing, continue the practice.
Yeah, and let me clarify what that was with Ryan Kiesel. It's about the plants being seen from the road. I said, no. I said, must be identifiable as marijuana.
Yeah, but the point is, it doesn't matter if
That's
I have the right to have it.
No, that's a separate issue. But for a cop to say, oh, there's something green over there, you just violated the law. And like, you don't know if that's a cedar tree.
Well, and that's the problem with 807. Folks
Right.
do not sign either 807 or 808 at this point.
Yeah.
They both are horrific the way they
Yeah.
are written. And as much as
I got news on that. I ran a poll on the Oklahoma MMA Facebook group I run. 239, I think, of the patients said, we don't support either 807 or
Good.
88. Only 6 support 807, and even less than that support 808.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's like 97, 98% of
Right.
patients, people already licensed in smoking,
invested
are
personally,
saying,
yeah.
no, we don't like either of those two.
Right.
So, I want to commend the good sense of the people.
You know, before we get too far away from the police and how they apply, what is the response I wanted to have to your spirit of the law statement was that what is simple, which is so simple, what is simple in the spirit is not so easily executed. It's hard to live by the spirit, isn't it?
No.
Ask the difference.
No, it is not.
Ask the 6,000 sects of
it is hard.
Christianity.
And I do know that when I was working at the Cherokee Casino, there was at least 4 different jurisdictions before you got to the spirit of the law and all of the analysis of how this will play out in court later. When you've got an existential threat or something that needs to be dealt with now, the cop would have to come in, and before he could do anything, he'd have to know, am I in Tulsa County or one of 3 different Indian districts?
Yeah.
And so he's thinking, I got to know where I'm at before I arrest this guy.
Yeah.
Just to know what the application of the arrest is.
Yeah.
And then worry about, the spirit of the law. So
it sounds like in that one, the spirit of the law was, you got to deal with it because there's a crime going on.
that's what
If there's
cops have to
crime-
deal with is an existential threat.
Spirit itself even refers
Well,
to essentially divine
no,
understanding
enforcement-
outside of
that's what
logic.
enforcement is.
Well, an existential, seeing a plant from the street is not an existential threat. We are.
I know.
So
But the
let's-
statement you were making was a little more general in that these cops need to arrest people with the spirit of the law. That's not the way it goes down.
No. The
They
way that
exercise
they treat
enforcement
people
first,
is.
and then you
I
go
don't know,
back
guys.
to that.
Have you seen Little Shop of
spirit.
Horrors? Maybe a plant
Oh,
could be an existential threat.
Yeah,
Let's not make sweeping
Well,
statements.
what happens when you're in an agency and you're tasked with creating rules to implement some, when it's a government program, the government's doing something like this, is a lot of times they get so buried in the weeds and how it's done,
In the
before
weeds.
they know it, they've already violated something that's in the statute that was written or passed by the people.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you can get so lost in the weeds.
The OMMA is
Exactly.
prime example of that.
Exactly.
But why? Because they did not start with a mindset of living by the spirit of the law. Because if they had done that, the OMMA wouldn't even exist.
That's
We've
true.
said it a million times.
So-
Lawmakers, more often than not, use the law as a vehicle to achieve their agenda.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether their agenda is lawful or not.
Well, what did Thomas Jefferson say? He said, "Rightful liberty is the free action of the will, and insofar as it does not run afoul of another, and I do not say of the law, because the law often is just the tyrant's will.
Yeah.
And so the point is that laws are often just tyrannical.
Is it like the
at
Bart
heart.
Simpson, Lisa Simpson conflict where he's windmilling and she's kicking and saying, listen, I'm not going to hit you, but if you run into this, it's your fault.
Right. Hey, we got to wrap it up. We're 10 minutes over time limit. Anything else? before we get out
I
of here?
do. FantasyLawmakers.com
Yes.
is live, folks.
Oh, wow.
Go to FantasyLawmakers.com.
Hold on. What
Is
is
it-
FantasyLawmakers.com?
I played fantasy
Is it like
football
Lord of
for
the Rings
years
for
with
lawmakers?
the kids.
What the
It's-
what with what?
I play fantasy football with my boys all the time. You know, it's where you pick your team, and my sons would have their team,
Yeah.
and they'd be all from different, parts of the
You won the
NFL
most,
or
that's
whatever.
all I care about.
And so what I'm doing with this is, again, Sooner Politics, Freedom Index from last year is how we started setting salaries. We are a salary cap league at Fantasy Lawmakers, lawmakers.com, and I'm going to give you 500,000 Sooner bucks.
Whoa.
Coupon code is 500K. 500K.
That's a lot of Sooner bucks, Dave.
Wow.
Right. And
Whoa,
you've got
very
to
generous.
You've got
That's
to
insane.
You've got to form a caucus. You are the caucus chairman of your own caucus, your team. 8-member team, not 7, not 9. Has to be exactly 8, and you got to keep it under that 500,000 salary cap.
Now, are these
So it's
rules available at
at FantasyLawmakers.com?
Fantasy
Sign up.
Lawmakers?
Now, we're having an open league right now. If you sign up by Groundhog Day, February 2nd, and what we're going to do is at the end of the year, when Sooner Politics kicks off their next Freedom Index, which you're going to be helping me on,
Yeah.
I think. And, yeah, of course, Holden. Doggone right.
Dang, I can't play fantasy
Right,
lawmakers.
so he's disqualified, as am I.
Forfeited his freedom bucks.
What I'm encouraging, if your county Republican Party or Libertarian Party or Democrat Party wants to form your own league, do so. If you want to start it, legally, fine. But for our open statewide competition, I want your team in by February 2nd.
Can I
Go ahead.
comprise a league of nothing other than Palte?
There you go.
All for it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm doing it right now,
I talked to
guys.
some lobbyists at the Capitol have been talking about this. Some of the LAs and EAs at the Capitol talking about having their own. So do it. It's free. It's put on by SoonerPolitics.org.
Then you get 500,000 bucks.
It would
Yes,
be,
right.
It would be a fantasy caucus. Would that be
It
correct?
is. And what we're doing is we're going to score them at the end of the session on how well they defended and affirmed the liberties of Oklahomans,
Excellent.
which is exactly what Old
Now,
Lam
is
is
Tom
about.
allowed to play
No.
since he's from a sovereign
No,
tribe?
my wife
Are you
will
Cherokee?
not let me gamble.
Okay.
So now I'm going to be getting some help on this so that if you sign up a team, you will get some email alerts from folks like Liza Grieve with Oklahomans for Health and Parental Rights, or from
Don Spencer.
Don Spencer's OK2A, some of the pro-life groups and the
Anthony
different...
Spino.
Now,
from,
why is this, Dave?
prison reform and
Yes.
all
Yeah,
that.
Dave.
And
Why?
the whole attempt of this is to get people more involved. Like I was talking to Coach Rader, the former TU coach who's in the Senate. He loves the idea. He says, man, you got to patent this, just like you said. But
Trade secrets,
I said,
boys. Trade secrets.
I said, look, I can't go down to the Dallas Cowboys game and stand on the sideline and say, hey, put so-and-so in. I need more rushing yards, right?
Yeah.
But I can go to the Capitol and I can say, Betgatter, what are you thinking?
You're on my team.
Yeah, and you just
You
got...
know this bill's going to get voted on for fantasy lawmakers.
Yeah.
You know this one has to be on there.
So when I get a heads up that a bill that's essential to liberty is about to get a vote, whether it's committee or whether it's on the floor of either chamber, and that people know, hey, this may impact your score in the indexing this year. And I'm just asking people, pick 8. Okay? Obviously, you want to pick your own representative because you are a constituent. You have their eyes and ears more than the rest should have anyway, right? But, get
That
8.
way you can at least influence your player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can
Exactly.
call your player and
Exactly.
say, play.
If
You
you call
just-
your aide
Yeah.
every time
You say,
something
listen,
is-
I need you to
something
vote
important
this
is
way,
done.
or I'm going to lose my fantasy lawmaking.
I've got 50,000
That's what you say.
Bitcoin.
Hey,
prices.
They won't care about the Constitution, but they will care about your
Oh,
fantasy
and
lawmaking.
here's the thing. And like I was telling Liza, I said, look, if you got something that's parental rights, this is one way that I can get the Second Amendment supporters and advocates caring about your bill, just like your, advocates for parental
Okay,
rights
look.
will start caring about other liberty
Now,
bills.
Right.
you've gotten like a 9-minute plug. Tell them one more time. Let's get out of here.
FantasyLawmakers.com. Be there.
You've been watching 3D Politics with me, Tom McKay, your host. I got David Van, David Oldham, David Dambrose. So check us again every Monday, and we're going to be back again with more exciting talk next week.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Do you
Well,
have a
that
kill
was good,
switch
man.
from over here?
No, it's on.
All this
I know.
fancy technology.
Yep,
guys.
go ahead and hit the stop.
Okay.
I turned the
We're
volume
still
down.
gonna, I'm not actually going to turn it off, guys. You'll be able to hear us afterwards.